Hi.
It's so great. Well, I'll hear all about you when we do the fear section. I hope. Right? Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm Amy Pearl. And I've thought up the idea for the show, sort of, but you'll hear more about that later. And this is Isaac Jones.
Yes. I'm the sound designer and composer for the show. So if you haven't heard our podcast before, I'm surprised you're here. Thank you very much for coming. But to give you a little background, 10 Things That Scare Me is a collection of little art poems that we think of as an experiment in empathy. Episodes are short, typically 5 to 7 minutes. There's no host, there's no narration, and the guest typically doesn't introduce themselves until the very end of the episode. So you're just kind of launched into this room with a person you know nothing about, and they start to list 10 things that scare them. It's a weird show. Critics have called it convention busting, and when you bust conventions, some people don't like it so much. Here's a really heartfelt 3-star review we received.
3 stars.
We do our best to feature a diverse range of voices, so some celebrities, but mostly ordinary people, including a lot of listeners that call into the show and leave us voicemails. So to me, what's exciting about the show is it's a clean slate. Nobody introduced themselves until the end, so everybody is coming from the same place, a blank slate. So for me, it's a great way to kind of hear from someone with no biases, and you might end up finding a lot of common ground with someone you discover maybe you have very different views from.
So that's what the show is all about. You guys have probably listened to it. And let me tell you what we're going to do tonight now. So we're going to start off by doing a pretty deep dive into sound design. So put your Pro Tools glasses on. That's going to be in Isaac's house. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to have a little special guest, surprise guest. Then we're going to turn it over to you guys. People are going to get about 5 minutes to write your fears. You should have been handed a hand-folded by me, little notebooky thing with a pencil. You can share a pencil. And you can write down your fears. We'll give you time to do that. And then we're going to hopefully get people to share after warming you up a little. And then at the end, Isaac is going to go through kind of a live sound design exercise with everybody. And it should be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be fun. What do you guys think? All right. So let's get started.
Great. So why 10 things?
Well, actually, it's not that exciting. But so we do ask people to write 10 fears. It's not one fear, even though our first meeting with my boss's boss, she was like, maybe we should try 5 fears. Maybe you thought of 3 fears. It's just like, yeah, whatever. But there's a reason for 10 fears. It's because when you start writing down your fears, you guys will find this later if you do the exercise. You start off with surface stuff, kind of being funny, maybe a little humble fear, like, oh, I'm afraid I'm not giving as much to charity as I should, or you're just going through the random fears, like I'm afraid of bugs, I'm afraid of heights, I'm afraid I'm not going to reach my full potential. But if you keep writing, you'll notice that you start getting to some of the real stuff, and it's the real, laying down, eyes closed in the dark, all alone fears that we want to talk about here, because that's what actually connects us all.
1, losing my stuff. 2, people touching my stuff. 3, people sitting or standing too close to me. 4, having bad breath. 5, talking to someone who has bad breath. 6,
So one might assume it's a 5-minute episode, so the interview process is probably pretty easy for this show. Hit record, the guest reads their list, move on, happy, let's sound design it. But the interviews actually typically last 1 to 2 hours, and it's much more of a conversation, getting into it, than just someone reading their list.
Yeah, it's a lot of people have said it feels like a therapy session. I mean, I wouldn't know, because actually I do go to therapy. But we spend a little bit of time at the top doing a lot of logistical stuff that everybody who does interviews has to do. Read your list, read it backwards, say just the numbers, say your name, tell us how you want to be introduced. But most of the time is spent teasing out why people are afraid of what they wrote down, maybe what they didn't write down, talking about things that may have been left off the list, kind of opening up to them if that's what it takes to get them to share to us. And we end up with a huge amount of tape, and then we just have to kind of boil that down into a little bouillon cube without losing the person's personality. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where Isaac comes in a little bit with the sound design.
Yeah, I mean, by the way,
we should introduce.
One thing I wanted to say was I feel like sometimes in those 90 minutes, like the first 60 minutes, you're just getting the person comfortable, and then it's only at minute 60 that they finally open up. So if they wrote heights on their list or snakes on their list, and we're kind of like, yeah, we get it, you can sometimes replace it with something that they didn't know was going to be on their list, but through conversation it kind of comes out. But the person you heard talking, by the way, is Liana Fink. She was in season 1. She's a graphic novelist. She is a cartoonist for The New Yorker. And her initial list when she started writing had 70 fears on it. So they had to work to get it down to 10. You can see, let's see where she is. 42.
Unexpected guests. 43. A knock on the door. 44. Being forced to eat. 45. Having to write a polite note.
And it goes on.
40.
That's actually good.
No, it's just a little therapy session, too.
Yeah, it's great.
I told you things that I don't tell anybody because,
That's after the end of like an hour and a half interview that I did with Bill, who's an ex-cop. If you work here, you might know him. He gives the little fire marshal talks to us. And he, as an ex-cop and as someone of his, age, he came in with a few things on his mind, but he didn't really have a list of 10. So most of the hour and a half was spent really pressing him for but let's see if you have any more fears, like anything else you're afraid of, like what about from your childhood? And after a while, you could see him getting more and more comfortable, and he did eventually open up.
My childhood was a little up and down, okay? I grew up in a tough family, in an Irish-type family, and, alcohol was prevalent in that, and abuse came out of that alcohol. So I was maybe when I heard beer cans opening up, maybe that was a point where I still get a little nervous and start to get, as a youngster, and then eventually I had to meet that head on, and I had to confront that, and I had to put a stop to that activity. And thank goodness I was able to. Because there was abuse in the house, okay? Yeah. Yes, it was a physical confrontation, and it stopped. And then if I wasn't around, it would be around again. See, I was the oldest of 5 boys. So everything fell onto my shoulders. And maybe that's why I'm able to take care of people. It's more natural for me to do that. It's more natural to lead, because I led five boys and 2 sisters. So I had to stop that. But listen, I had sick feelings in my stomach, and sometimes at night when I heard beer cans popping, and then sometimes things would go wrong. And it's an unsteady feeling, So needless to say, I'm not a big proponent of alcohol.
So, it ends on a laugh, but that was raw tape, by the way, just straight from the interview. And you can see when you have 90 minutes of stuff like that, you're going to end up leaving a lot behind. And it's like working with that kind of tape and knowing that you have to boil it down to just, there's no narrator, there's no help from outside coming. You have to just use your tape. And when we do that, it's kind of like writing a poem, like Isaac said before. There's a lot in there. There's pauses that are full. There's one word that means multiple things, and then all that tape that's left on the cutting room floor, we sometimes can kind of bring it back in through sound design.
Yeah, And I will say it's fun for me to go and listen to raw tape because you'll have like 90 minutes and you never record like the interview side of things. So you have these pauses where you can tell like Amy's talking, and so it'll be like a pause for like 2 minutes and then just a huge burst of laughter, and you have no idea what crazy thing Amy said to them that they're just like taken aback by, and then they open up even more. So it's always fun to work with raw tape. But
raw tape.
But I don't know. For me, it's I think when you take 90 minutes and boil it down to 5 minutes, you're going to lose a lot of good material. And what typically happens is that there are some things that are like our babies that we're like, it's too long-winded, it's not going to fit in 5 minutes, so we have to cut it. And so like Amy was saying, we'll take it and see if we can tease something out of that, an image or something that could translate to sound, and use that in one of the episodes, just the sound part of it. So this is an example where I created a song in kind of the same sound world as an early mixtape from The Weeknd, House of Balloons, if you know it. And so obviously The Weeknd's like a huge superstar now and is doing tons of stuff, but at this point in his career, he had a very like unique and specific sound. And so one of our guests, Rohan, was talking about how this music was like the soundtrack to his life when he was living in LA, and like that period in his history like was linked to a ton of the fears on his list. So even though we cut that out of the interview and he never talked about this record specifically, we used this song as kind of a recurring theme throughout all of his episode, and it's a way to kind of like keep that in his episode even though we cut the tape.
Yeah. And I think working with the team where you can have weird ideas like that, where the only people who really know that are going to be Rohan and the people who were working on the show. But I mean, we did always have a hope that our, love and intense focus would somehow translate to other people understanding what was going on. But I guess it didn't really. But sometimes it does. I mean, I think it was like the show was kind of like just make it and just do it. And so the team was always ready to do really weird stuff. And I think also, though, like some of the stuff we decided to do and some of the ways we made the show, the way we shaped the show, made it very difficult for the sound design. Because one of the jobs of a sound designer when you're launching a show is to kind of come up with a sound for the show. Just like it should have you should be able to turn it on and know like, oh, this is this show a little bit. And
yeah. And I think for me, that goes beyond just like, oh, that's the theme song, so that's the show. Like, I think this show was an opportunity for the entire episode to be like, oh, this is 10 things that scare me. Even if you're tuning in to minute 2, it can still feel that way.
Well, definitely. It's so disjointed. But but I think like some of the things that that Isaac was talking about before, like the fact that there's no host, the fact that the episodes are super short, the fact that it switches tone a lot, those things made it difficult to come up with a kind of sound signature for the show. And I mean, could you tell a little bit about what it was like when you first heard the tape and like how you came up with the sound for the show?
Yeah, so the very first thing I ever heard for this show was the pilot that Amy recorded, which is this 3-minute voice memo that she recorded straight into her iPhone mic. And it has this kind of like spontaneous, unpolished, like vulnerable character to it. And so when I first heard it, my engineer brain was like, well, if we want to use this as an actual episode, we'll have to like reduce that room noise in the background, and we're going to have to like clean up those little times that she bumps the mic. Really, we should probably just re-record the entire thing. But if you tried to take what she wrote when it was totally spontaneous and translate it into a studio recording, you're going to lose a lot of these moments that I think truly just came to you in the moment. And so I started thinking about like, it feels very unpolished, and I think the iPhone mic kind of like contributes to that. So how could we take those kind of unpolished feelings of the recording and kind of emphasize them? And as I started working with the like really short tape, one thing that I realized was it's short, but the emotional range is really, really wide. So you might be having a really heartfelt moment for 20 seconds, and then a very funny moment the next second, and then a grotesque image, and then just an absurd kind of abstract thought. So if I tried more conventional podcast scoring techniques of like have the cue fade in, have a nice slow fade out, it kind of didn't really work with the pacing and the punchy factor that we wanted to have. If someone is doing something very heartfelt, I do a different music cue than if they're being absurd or gross or whatever. So I was thinking, like, how can we switch up the pacing and have the emotional tone of it shift at the drop of a hat? The other thing that I was really thinking about in crafting the sound was we knew we were going to have tons of different recording formats. So because we wanted it to be kind of a mosaic of voices and all the fears happening around the world right now, if you want to talk to someone who's off the grid, if you want to talk to a dog musher in Alaska, if you want to talk to someone who's doing work abroad and constantly in the field, out of service, you're not going to be able to get them into a studio very easily. And we knew we wanted those voices to be a part of this. So how do you craft a sound of the show that feels cohesive and feels unique, but also can cater to studio recordings and also phone tape, field recordings, all these different levels of fidelity? So let me go to my next card. So when I was first pitching the sound of the show, typically when you'll play something for someone, you don't want to just say, like, here's the idea, do you like it? So I crafted a number of different pitches, and I'd like to play a few of them for you. So this first one that I pitched, each of these I kind of crafted into a whole episode, but I just want to give you a little, like, quick view of how it sounds. This one, I was kind of imagining a sound that would be inspired by ASMR, so a lot of like really close mic textural, if you've been on YouTube, you've heard of this. So this one here, I called the music box direction. It's more kind of like lullabies, electronic, warm sounds. So, very different. Obviously, kind of an ironic spin on it. Let's all talk about vulnerabilities, This one, I don't think anyone ever really thought it was going to be the sound of the show, but it actually was our working theme song for like a month of production. And so then I did what a lot of creatives do when they're pitching, which is save the one they're most excited about for last. I called this the glitch aesthetic. So as you can hear, it kind of sounds like someone grabbed a field recorder, took it with them on their day, and just hit record at random moments. There's a lot of like handling noise on the mic. There's a lot of like things cutting in and out. And this was the first time I was kind of playing around with this idea of the sound of the show being hard cuts between different rooms and sonic spaces that you're sitting in. So that's the one I was excited about, because then it's like, oh, anytime we need to switch the emotion, just hard cut straight to the next thing. So what we're sitting in now is something that I think about a lot, because one of the first conversations I had with Amy about, like, how should the show feel to listen to? She was like, you know that feeling when you're still in bed, staring at the ceiling, it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and someone is mowing their lawn, like, down the street, and you just, like, hear that, like, grinding sound? I want the show to feel like that, which is something I've just like thought about ever since. And so that's what I pitched. I said, these are the 4 directions. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, you had those 4 directions, and then we said, let's do all of them.
Yeah.
and we did. And like, I think you've said that as a sound designer, that was tough to hear.
I think it was tough to hear. Well, you don't want to like pitch 4 things and then be like, oh, let's just do them all. That's easy, right? But then the more time I spent with this show, it actually did make sense for this, just because it has such a wide range of emotion. But when I started doing that, I was like, okay, we'll try to do them all, but we also need it to sound like this show and not like other shows. And so the first few episodes I made, everyone was like, they sound really good. They all sound kind of spooky. And is there a way that we can have like a wider range of emotion? So I want to play an episode that is actually Amy's dad that you interviewed, Mike Pearl. And I think this was kind of a breakthrough for me. If we can pull up Pro Tools here, I can show you guys. This was a breakthrough for me just to feel like, oh, how can we take this show and make it feel playful?
Number 7, losing all my money. Every day I look to see, how much money I have in the bank and how much I have in my mutual funds, and I make sure it's all there. I'm always worried something's going to happen and it's all going to be gone. Either someone is going to sneak into all my accounts and take all my stuff, or the market will go bluey. Number 8, crazy people. Originally, I put down clowns, but I changed it to crazy people because that's what clowns just remind me of, people who are out of their minds, and I'm afraid of them. I'm afraid I will get attacked. I'm not afraid of, like, robbers or getting mugged or anything like that, because I'm not one of these people that looks prosperous or tries to look prosperous or anything.
Prosperous, yeah.
Prosperous.
We're not a prosperous family. We don't look prosperous. We don't try to look prosperous.
So, yeah, 2 quick things I want to point out about this moment. For me, this was a moment where I figured out, like, oh, you can do any kind of music, but what if it's not music happening as the podcast score, but happening as a room, and it's kind of incidentally in the space that you're in. So I wrote this silly piano cue, and if I just take the reverb and EQ off of it, it's a regular piano. But then you EQ it so it sounds like it's coming through a wall, and you add reverb so it sounds like it's echoing down the hall. Then you add in room tone, so you're in like more of a space that has air and depth. Then you add birds, so there's sounds coming down through the window. And then someone messes up, and that's not something you would put in a final product of a podcast, but someone practicing piano, you would have that. So that's just a way I started thinking about sound in the show. It's like, oh, a music cue can be something that's like a spontaneous, lived moment, and not something that's like always scoring.
But also this tape was phone tape, and it was, not the easiest to understand. And you worked with that. I mean, we did a lot of work on the phone tape, but not the kind of work you usually do on phone tape.
Yeah, I mean, I think phone tape is generally kind of like try to avoid it if you can in podcasts because it's less intelligible, it's a little harsh to listen to. And so I definitely went through and tried to make it easier to listen to. But there were also, if I bring up the very beginning of the episode, there are all these moments where it's like you're trying to talk to him, he can't really hear you, so you're talking loud, and you hear Amy bleeding through into his mic, and then he's like dropping the phone and like making all these noises. So this is the very top of the episode.
Sorry?
Yeah, I hear you. You hear me?
I'm sorry. What? Hold on 2 seconds.
So before we hear anything from his list, you hear that. And I think that to me is...
Picasso.
I think that to me is like, okay, we got some messy phone tape. There's a lot of extraneous noise. That cat was happening the entire interview.
But you know what? He's dead now.
Oh.
R.I.P. Picasso. But he was 19, so.
Yeah.
Sorry to throw you off,
R.I.P.
Isaac.
No, it's good. Yeah, so I don't know. So I guess that's the point I was trying to make is like sometimes rather than trying to clean things up, we would just take them and boost them. And I want to play another episode. This is Jasmine's episode. If you
Yeah.
want to say something about.
Can I say one other thing about this tape? I think this was an instance, and it definitely happened in other interviews too, where part of what we would deliver to Isaac with me and the other producers would be your final edit, which you went over with the other producers and with our editor, Paula, and also Emily, and we'd go over and over it, and Isaac would get that beautiful little poem with no sound design, no space in it. But we would also often give him a little track of, any little mistakes that happened, like weird coughing sounds that came up, like weird, like ba 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 ba, like things people did, because those always came in handy when we were trying to bring life back into this like super condensed tape. So I think that's like the kinds of things that you usually are kind of bummed out about, where we would get really excited when they happened, which is like, that's the kind of job you want, man, where like your mistakes are making you happy. It's great. But let's do Jasmine. It was kind of I think it's like, this is a different thing where, since the episodes are so short, but there's so much in them, sometimes the sounds that Isaac produced ended up having like multiple layers of meaning.
Yeah. And so 2 things I'll point out before I play is the first moment, obviously, I made a hip-hop beat, but then I made it sound like you're in a dorm room hearing it from the floor above. And at the end, it's another moment where something that we could have just edited out and had it run more smoothly. Instead, we leaned into it and like made a whole moment.
Number 1, zombie apocalypse. Number 2, that hip hop will stop evolving. Number 3, working. So I just graduated college. Shout out to Lincoln University, HBCU. Woo. And I'm afraid of working. No, I'm not afraid of finding a job. I'm afraid of getting a job and me just being miserable and me questioning, oh, Jasmine, you should have followed that passion. Honestly, I haven't found my passion yet, and I'm afraid that I may not find it. When I get those quiet moments, I critique my every action, because I'm a very thoughtful person, and not the good thoughtful, like the overthinking thoughtful. Number 4, can it be controversial? Okay. Not caring whether or not America gets blown to smithereens by Korea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot in there, obviously, but I think what I wanted to talk about here was the banging. Did you guys hear the banging? And so, I mean, Isaac had one idea for why he put that in, but I'm sure it meant something different to each of you. But so what was the banging about in there?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that like changes meaning the more you listen to it. For me, the reason that I made it was later in the interview, she's talking about a fear that involves her dad and how she feels like her dad has like built this wall between their family and the rest of the world, and he's very overprotective. And it's a metaphor, but that image of like building a wall somehow just like, I was like, that could be a good sound. And so I put it there because I wanted to like displace it from where that image was brought up, so it's not too on the nose. And in this moment, I feel like it kind of brings up a few different things to me. It's like the sound of, being fresh out of college, moving into your new apartment, and like someone is upstairs like hanging a tapestry and you're trying to get to bed. And then there's the feeling of like, oh, you just like got this liberal arts degree, what do I do with it? Like maybe like a construction job is like not the job that I want. And she's talking about fear of not finding a career. So I feel like, to me, it doesn't really matter like what specifically it means. It's that it puts you in a place and you start building these associations yourself. So
I think definitely for me, it's like you're laying in bed and someone is hanging a picture in the apartment above you and you realize that you're not really alone, and you'll never be alone. There'll always be like people bugging you and like ready to run into you in the hallway, and like they're fixing up their apartment, but your apartment looks like shit, and it always will. Just like that kind of stuff. But anyways, really layered with meaning. So
All right, we're low on time, so I'm going to play one more clip for you.
Are you going to do Lemon Twigs?
Yeah, obviously. So I'm going to do one more clip before we move on, which is a clip from the Lemon Twigs, which is a band, and this is one of the brothers that's part of the duo named Brian Daddario. And one podcast trick, always leave it rolling when someone's in the studio. You're not going to use everything, but like you never know what you might miss. So when he was just writing his list and just getting ready to start the interview, he randomly hummed, ya-da-da-da-da, ya-da-da-da-da-da. He hummed that to himself, and I don't know if he wrote that or if that's the thing he heard, but everyone on the team, it was like an earworm. It was just like with us for like days. So given the tone of the beginning of his interview, and we didn't really know how to like, he's kind of like making fun of himself and making fun of the interview, and it's like difficult to figure out like how to frame that. So we just grabbed his melody and made a couple songs out of it.
Da 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 da. Okay. Number one, my parents dying. That scares me. Number two, getting Alzheimer's disease. Number three, my brother dying. We're both on the same page about what we'd prefer. You know, we'd both prefer to be the first. But I remember, you know, like falling asleep in the same bed and like hugging each other. Like, I mean, we just like really like, we're so close.
So I thought it worked. It was fun. And then later in the episode is maybe one of my favorite things I've ever done on this show. The last fear that he ever says is that he has this fear that's from his childhood of being in the bathroom and taking a shower or using the toilet and having the door closed, because if the door is closed, then the killer in the bathroom can get you and there's no way out. So he has this lingering fear of like the bathroom.
Same.
So I definitely knew that I wanted to like use the sound of a shower at some point, and I wanted to have it earlier in the show than when he's talking about it. So I put it here, and I'll play it first.
Number 7, losing touch with my soul. I didn't think that I believed in having a soul or something. Whatever that means. I mean, I have a pretty vague idea of what it means to myself. But I was able to say it in a song before I was able to ever say it to another person.
And just to have my worst nightmare here, I'm going to go ahead and solo myself. Never wanted anyone to hear that, but here we are. 10 things that scare me. This to me is a moment where obviously it's the shower thing, so it's foreshadowing the thing that's about to be said. And he's talking about writing music, and for me as a composer, I find that all of my best ideas come to me in the shower. So there are tons of voice memos of me like fresh out of the shower, like trying to record this melody before I forget it. And so this to me was just a way of kind of having all those things collide, and it ended up with me singing in the shower.
That's great. So, do you want to go rooms and rooms, or?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When you make 100 episodes, or I guess like 120 episodes now, and there are multiple rooms within it, you end up making a lot of things. So I'd be curious if you ever hear something and you're like, what was that? I can definitely tell you specifically. But just so you have an idea of like typically where we're coming from, here are a few selections of rooms that we've created. Jump roping, window washing, soil scientist lab, cowboy in a meadow, eating cereal in a bunker, dog park, dropping a pan while baking, coat room at a party, birds dispersing from a thicket, rest stop diner, highway traffic, vertigo, a world without animals, Kentucky Derby, Christmas carolers, microwave popcorn, tending a
I'm
garden,
gonna go first.
my mom snoring, relaxing with a cocktail before dinner, church bells in a ghost town, and biting terracotta.
Yes, I can remember every single one of those episodes. So, as time went on, we made a lot of rules and broke a lot of rules. And in this second season, the last episode, which isn't out yet, but you guys will hear it in a couple months if you subscribe to the podcast, we actually used tape that was the inspiration for the show. And I'm sure most of you know this, but I got the idea for the show from listening to my friend or my boss. Can your boss be your friend? Who knows? My friend. Maybe I'll go with boss. Sorry, guys. Hang on a second. My boss's kids. My boss played me this tape of her kids. I think it was her husband's idea to get them to record a little tape of themselves, what they were afraid of. And, long after she forgot about it, I was listening to it and obsessed with it. And I just loved the intensity of it and the rawness of it. And we decided to use that as the last episode of the show. And in it, we, as I said, break a lot of our own rules and stick to a lot of the rules, but we want to play you a little bit of that episode now.
I'm gonna go first. First thing that's scary, number 1, the lake. There's scary bugs and fish, biting fish. So I'm scared of that. I think biting fish is scary. Literally everyone knows biting fish is scary. Because when you're swimming underwater, you never know when there's a biting fish. Second thing I think is scary. I'm scared of the laundry room because of the pipes. The pipes are scary when you look up at them. They look really scary, like they're going to suck you into the tube. Tell that to your kids so they know not to look at the pipes. Third thing I think is scary, the black door in the laundry room. The one and only thing is, it's not actually black. It's a white door, but on the side of it, it has cracks that are black, and it's really scary. Fourth thing that I think is scary, getting burned. For example, today I burned my 2 fingers, and now I have blisters on them. Fifth thing I think is scary, bees. Number 1, honeybees. Number 2, about bees, flowers. Flowers are scary because you never know when there's bees in the flowers collecting pollen. For example, when you're passing by and you're really loud, bees can just sting you. Third thing I think is scary.
So if you want to hear more, you'll have to listen later this spring.
But as a special treat, we actually have these sisters, Ida and Noah, are here with us. I want you to give them a big hand. Come on up, guys. So why don't you tell me who you are?
Noah.
Can you say a full sentence?
I'm Noah. Yeah, I just said a full sentence. I'm Ida.
Okay, so how old were you when you recorded that, Ida?
7. 5.
And can you guys tell me if some of your fears have changed since then?
I'm not afraid of bees anymore.
Is that true?
Yeah, well, yes, they have changed a lot.
Tell me.
About what?
Tell me what's changed. Tell me something you're afraid of now.
Well, I'm not afraid of bees or flowers anymore.
Thank the Lord. Do you have any advice for everybody for when they have to write up their fears, which we're going to do next? Do you have anything like how to dig really deep? What do you think people should do?
Just think of a time that you were scared and then write it down.
Brilliant. What about you?
Use a pen and a paper.
Just really elemental. Kids, guys. I don't know, everybody. All right, so it's now come to the time in the show when I want you to like feel around and find your paper and your pencil.
And if you don't have
it,
paper,
just hold
someone
your
can
hand
come
up
around.
and
Just hold your
someone
hand
will,
up.
yeah. So we're going to give you about 5 minutes. We're going to play some music. And if you can just like kind of think of the spirit of the show and remember that like it's a very personal show. It's not like a political show. It's not like, I hate when Mayor de Blasio doesn't pass the plastic bag ban. Like don't say that. Say like, I'm afraid that I will be buried in plastic and I'll never get to see a real animal or something like that. Like just do it personal. And then after that, we're going to get everybody psyched up and hopefully do a little sharing. Okay? So, right. for this part. Okay, guys. So everybody has. Wait, I was supposed to say guys. Okay, folks. Everybody's written their fears down. Hopefully you got 10. And now we're going to take a little session where we're going to shake out all our self-consciousness. So everybody stand up. Yes, just stand up, really. This is like we're all friends here. All right, so I want, put your fears on your chair. What a weird thought, huh? Put your fears on your chair. You need hands-free for this. So we're going to do a little exercise because we're going to be sharing. So I want everybody to be up and ready to go. All right, so everybody copy me. We're going to get a beat going. Copy me. Copy me. Oh, it's like the stormtroopers. Mandalorian. Actually, if anybody has an Apple Plus password they want to share with me so I can also watch that show. Whatever.
Disney Plus.
Whatever. Okay, now, see if you can do this also. Follow along with me. Wee woo whoop. Wee woo whoop. Woo. 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 Wee woo woo woo. Wee woo woo woo. Whoop woo woo. Whoop woo woo. Oh, so good. Okay, now I can't do this part, so Isaac has to do this part.
All right, same thing but clapping. So.
Okay.
Okay. All right, cool.
All right, so let's divide the room then. Let's do it.
All right, so here's what we want to do. We're all going to be stomping. This half of the room is going to be following me clapping. This half of the room
This
following
half follow
Amy
me
singing.
whooping. Okay, you ready? Okay, so. Woo woo whoop. Everybody's psyched up, so now sit down, or you can remain standing if you're that psyched. And someone's going to go around with the mics, and we're going to hopefully find people who want to share their fears. So let me switch over to this. So does anybody want to share a fear from their list after all that whooping? No? Okay, then let's move on.
Great, so I have more now.
Okay, guys, come on, really. Does anybody want to just read one or two things? Okay, this gentleman here. Wait for your mic.
Hello. Number 5 on my list was someone with my name being publicly despicable.
Oh my God.
That's a very... The next villain of society happened to have my exact name. That'd be a bummer.
Mm-hmm. What is your name? Timothy McVeigh?
Nick.
Oh, Nick.
Yeah.
Wait, but any Nick, you would feel like that's horrifying, or it has to be the full name?
I'm not trying to dox myself right now,
okay.
But if it were full name, sure.
Don't say it.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a similar fear to that? A fear about your reputation? A fear about losing your individuality? Or anybody else want to share a fear? Raise it up. Oh, look, we have somebody over there, a soccer player. Say it into the mic.
Number 1, spiders.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same as in your episode. Well, no, it was a spider webs on the dock. I guess it's different. But yes, spiders. Who's afraid of spiders? Woo! But we all know that spiders are good people and that we should be kind to them, right? If we can. Any other people? Did anybody spend some time writing about insects, animals? No? Yeah? Yeah. That's a very common thing. Does anybody want to share it? Anybody have any existential fears? Fears that really...
Over here?
Oh, we got some over here.
Getting caught on a lie.
Whoa, getting caught in a lie. Wait, don't give the mic back yet. I want to... Where do you think that comes from? I definitely have that, by the way. Like, I have so much trouble saying I'm wrong to my family. Like, I will go down to my grave before I admit that I was wrong or that I actually said that. I'd be like, no, I didn't. But where does it come from for you, do you think?
Past experience of being bad at lying.
Like when you were a little kid? Like you didn't chop down
Young
the cherry
adulthood.
tree? Oh, like what? I mean, you don't have to tell it specifically if you don't want to, but like what kind of circumstance? Was it like a love connection type thing?
A work lie.
A work lie.
Those are bad.
Those are bad.
Hey, I finished that project already.
Okay, good. Good, that's in the past. You don't have to worry about that. Well, I mean, one of the reasons we're afraid of stuff having to do with work is because, like you lose your job, you lose your money, you lose your house, you end up on the street. There you go. You're back with de Blasio and his whole situation. So, does anyone else existential fears?
Or any fears at all?
Oh, I see a couple of people here. There you go, right in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I have somebody in the back. Then we'll bring the mic up. Right, you could be next.
I realized I was afraid of choosing.
Of choosing?
Yeah. Which means having many options, and choosing means like abandoning some of the options I have. Choosing to go into one direction means dropping the others. That can be something quite terrifying.
Yes, we did. Actually, we had somebody, Farhad, right? Mm-hmm. There was somebody who had a fear of making a choice.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
is it always a fear of missing out, or is it that you'll do the wrong choice? Like, what do you think it is?
Yeah. Fear of doing the wrong choice.
Mm-hmm. That was exactly what his fear was.
Of regretting, maybe.
Mm.
Yeah, it's too bad that we only get to live in one timeline. But I hear they're working on that over at Apple.
I heard so.
Somebody here in the front had a fear. Let's wait for the mic to come to you. In the green sweater.
I think it's sort of the same as her fear, but it was not, I have a fear of not existing on some conscious level. It's like I'm not really afraid of death, but I'm afraid of not missing out, of not being in this fantastic world. That's my fear, that I'm going to not exist.
So you're enjoying sitting here, receiving all your visual, auditory, smell signals, and just like being a living being, like if it's bad, if it's good, whatever, you just like the experience of being present. Yeah, I guess if you really, though, had the experience of like knowing that you would forever and ever until the sun disintegrated 4 billion years from now, be conscious, do you think you would look at it differently? Is it just like, sometimes the fact of the end staring us in the face can like help us want to live more? And if somebody said, you can live forever, would you suddenly be like, no?
Make me a vampire, let's do it.
Here we have somebody in the middle here. Mike in the gray sweater. Raise your hand so our runners can see you.
It's funny because one of mine is actually the concept of eternity. Freaks me out. I want there to be an end date forever, or not forever, but I just don't like the idea of forever. That really freaks me out. That's scary. And then another one is trash. Where does it all go? Like, we know where it goes, but where does it just sits there. I think about landfills a lot.
There's an episode of Today Explained all about trash that tells you all about where it goes. It was really good. Look it up. I'm not seeing everything because of the bright lights, but are there people back there whose hands are raised because you want to share fears, or are you just like a bunch of trolls back there? Oh, there's one. Okay.
Hi. Misinterpreting reality.
What does that mean?
Like everyone is experiencing something that I'm not aware of it, or I'm like completely misconstruing a situation, or like I like to think of myself as someone that sees everything objectively, and then being completely wrong about that is terrifying.
Is it like, when you think about like what do marshmallows taste like, and what you think they taste like is not what everybody else thinks they taste like?
I think that's a more fun version of it.
Okay. Where does that come from? Are you a controlling person? Like, do you like losing control?
I don't.
Like getting super stoned or whatever you kids do?
No, I think that's another. I don't know if that's another related. I feel like all these fears are ultimately the same thing, but it's
ultimately the same thing, guys. There's the whole gist of the show.
That's the show.
So often, someone's list, it's like it really does have a theme often. But what is yours? Do you think?
I think it's. Again, I like to think that I can kind of take everything as it comes, and again view things pretty objectively, and like be cool about everything, and like think critically. And then that's like never quite the case, and there's always some weird like tick that's like bothering me, and it's like I can't get over that hump. So I don't know. I'm now babbling a little bit, but
no, I mean it's interesting because it's like it's kind of like how you see the world, and you want the world you see to be something that you can like constantly check and be like, yes, it's here are its corners, and this is its shape. And every once in a while it feels like, wait, it goes on all behind me as well? We kind of, that is scary, but.
And the first way you phrased it, I thought it might have been relatable to like being caught in a lie, but it seems like maybe it's actually like, the idea that I think I'm being objective and I'm not. Is that more where it's coming from, or?
No, not necessarily. I don't know. I guess I haven't thought that much about it.
Yeah,
we gave you 5 minutes. What will you
No, I think it's like just a fundamental misunderstanding of what, like, I don't know. Maybe there's at a more elemental level of like everything is much more different than I think it is. Anyway.
It's a scary thought. Do we have time for one more though?
Yeah, I think we can do one
Does
more.
anybody in the back there? I see a man in a red hat.
I'm afraid of my building catching on fire in the middle of the night, and then I don't have enough time to get dressed. So I'm in the street naked, and my building is on fire.
Oh my God, that's combining a lot of things. But actually, that reminds me, I'm always afraid of taking off my shirt in public, so I'm gonna do it in front of you guys if you don't mind. All right.
On that note, let's do something else. Love you, Amy.
But are you gonna do something else? Thanks for sharing, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was awesome.
If you wanna take your lists home, you can. But if you wanna leave them, I would be really happy to hang on to them for you and read through them because I love reading about other people's fears.
So before we go, I wanted to basically get a brains trust moment going on and talk a little bit about some more specifics of sound design and see if you guys have ideas of like how you would sound design a thing if you were working with raw tape or working with an edit. So to kind of show you, if we can pull up Pro Tools here, yep. This is another moment from Alaska's episode. So in this moment, it might seem pretty...
I don't think we played the first one, so you should...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we should.
Oh, yeah. Got
so
it.
this is Alaska Thunderfuck. She was in character here, so she's a singer, drag artist, an author, a lot of things, and we did a really great interview with her. So
yeah, and this is an example of working with Skype audio. But in this music cue, I think you'll kind of get what I'm doing here, but I just want to show you how like one thing that feels like it's a pretty simple idea can actually be a bunch of layers happening.
Number 7, not having enough time to get ready. Drag is like, there's so much time and preparation and gluing stuff to ourselves. Putting all this stuff on, transforming your face and then the hair and then gluing on stuff to your fingers and your eyeballs and putting in a fake body and like all these things. So like it's especially terrifying if you're having a dream and they tell you, oh, you have 5 minutes and you have to get ready.
And it goes on. But so I just wanted to kind of break it down for you and see in Pro Tools. I don't know how many of you are familiar with digital audio workstations, but in this cue, obviously the green thing here is Alaska talking. And then, so one element of this is kind of like music playing in the background. So that's like a kind of bounce music cue. So that's the actual thing that I made. And then through this thing called speakerphone, you can make it sound like it's coming through an old boombox kind of thing or an old speaker cabinet. So that makes it feel more like it's kind of like over there in the distance, like you're in the back of a green room area at a stage and you're getting ready to go out and perform. So that's one element. You also, at a bar, have a bunch of people in the background. So that's kind of buried in there. And then you have moments like this where the blow dryer comes on. So it sounds buried in there, like it's all just part of one thing that's happening.
Drag is like, there's so much.
But as you're thinking of sound designing, it's actually all of these different layers coming together. And you might have your little sound of, say, grabbing something out of a little jar to put mascara on. And those kinds of things you want to treat differently than you would more of like an ambibed or something like that, so that it kind of dance around the dialogue of what's being said. So as we think of this next step, think of, are there multiple layers to something? If we have an idea for sound design, can we start one place and then build additional things on top of it? So for this exercise, what I want to do, I can bring up that slide if you want to throw that on the back. This is going to be an episode from this past Monday that came out. Gia Tolentino, an amazing author and just voice. She has these 10 fears. So that's everything that she has on her list. I want to play just the first 3 for you and get you brainstorming about like, okay, you're hearing this totally dry. What kinds of sounds, what images come to mind that you could associate with what she's saying?
Okay, so number 1, I feel, so I've been blessed with an extremely even temperament and like a lot of sort of cognitive coping mechanisms. Like, let's say I'm like on acid or something and I see, a little tiger walk up to me. Like, even on acid, I'm very capable of being like, that is a fun tiger that my brain invented and it's not real. And how interesting that your brain invented that. And that's nice, But so my fear is that sort of cognitive mechanism will break. Like maybe it's just really like a thin shimmering curtain keeping me from total madness. And luckily that curtain has always stayed down. But what if it was lifted one day?
So that, I would say, is one room, right? So I'm wondering, all of these images are up for grabs. What she said specifically was up for grabs, but any images pop out? Do you have an idea where like, oh, I'd love to hear the sound of this with that? I'm wondering. Yeah. Baby crying? Yeah, so I actually end this episode with, those little things that like hang above the crib and make a little like twinkly sound? I do that and like a baby. A mobile.
A mobile?
The technical term. But yeah, definitely. and maybe not in tandem with like a sound of like thunk on the sidewalk, so we don't make that too immediate an image. Other ideas, yeah. A tiger roar? Yeah. So in this show, there's this little like window in the theme song that we always call the Easter egg. So this little like snapping sound happens, and then there's a little bit of found audio that relates to some image or concept from the episode. So in the Easter egg of this episode's theme song, you can hear like a lion roar.
Wait, no, I think we changed it to...
Oh, wait, no, you're right.
Yeah, we changed it to something that actually has to do with Dakota. Anyway, don't worry. But yeah, we did have it as
We
a lion.
thought about doing a lion's roar for the...
A tiger, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Other ideas? So this to me was an exciting moment to sound design, because what does a curtain between this reality and the next sound like? To me, it sounds like this. So that, to me, in this segment, is the curtain between reality. It's the synth that, as the piece progresses, it goes through a plugin called GRM Shuffling, which is kind of a granularizing plugin. So if you imagine, it kind of like takes little snippets of the audio and like moves them around. And to me, that was like a fun sound design or a technical way of being like, what if we take this curtain and have it break? So reality kind of like falls apart before your eyes. So you can listen for that as it happens. The other element that I came up with is something that our producer, Odelia Rubin, who worked on this episode, was talking about, which for some reason she had this image in her head of that moment in Who Framed Roger Rabbit where like they go into the cartoon world and like all the cartoons are like singing and it's this kind of fantastic, absurd moment. And so she was like, yeah, if you could get like some sort of like cartoonish music that somehow we like break through this curtain into. So I wrote this music cue here. You get it.
Scary.
Maybe not my most inspired moment, but you know.
I love it.
And so that to me is kind of like where we end up. So this cue is starting in this world where you're kind of like in that space of the shimmering curtain of reality, and then gradually through that shuffle plug-in, we kind of break through into that other side. So here's how it all sounds when it comes together.
Okay, so number one, so I've been blessed with an extremely even temperament and like a lot of sort of cognitive coping mechanisms. Like let's say I'm like on acid or something and I see, you know, a little tiger walk up to me. Like even on acid, I'm very capable of being like, that is a fun tiger that my brain invented and it's not real, and how interesting that your brain invented that, and that's nice, you know? But so my fear is that sort of cognitive mechanism will break. Like maybe it's just really like a thin shimmering curtain keeping me from total madness. And luckily that curtain has always stayed down. But what if it was lifted one day?
Wow,
So there you have it.
It's just a little intense.
So I have more, but I think it's probably time to wrap up. So
Let's
I
wrap
just
it
want to
up.
thank you all for coming. This has been so fun.
So thanks for coming out. If you want to just like immerse yourself in fears, you can visit our random fear generator, which I just updated yesterday with a whole like hundreds of new fears that people submit. There's a link to submit them on there too. And you could just click on through there. We're always reading and listening. And, you know, what scares me? You got to find out by listening to the show. If you listen through the credits, you'll hear. But thanks for coming out, you guys.